Am I out of line here or is she? I am not really sure where to even begin. A few years ago my MIL came to live in my home after the death of my FIL as she cannot shoulder her bills on her own. I was completely understanding of this. In fact, we gave up our master bedroom in order to make her more comfortable as the basement was not finished and a room would need to be constructed to fit everyone. I was happy to make her more comfortable, but I was unhappy with our room being moved away from my daughter to another level, but I did it for my MIL. In the old house it started off small with my daughter. She fixated on her, and due to the fact she just lost her husband I tried not to say too much and give her time to process and heal from her loss. Since moving into our new house, this has only gotten worse and I now live in my worst nightmare. She interferes in our parenting constantly. Neither my husband nor myself can speak to our daughter without her coming in behind us to continue the conversation as if we didn't do a good enough job with her in the first place. Also, anyone in my family says anything to my daughter she does the same thing, and a lot of people don't speak to her when my MIL is around. We put our daughter to bed and MIL will go in there and speak with her because the child knows if she calls out to her she will answer. So bedtime is pretty much whenever. She pushed her religious ideas on my daughter, though my husband and I have made it clear we do not share her faith. She doesn't seem to care. When she first moved in we made it clear once things had settled down we would prefer her to join a club, visit family, find a hobby maybe. Live, not sit around the house all the time, as she is completely capable of doing so. She never leaves, and is always in the middle of everything. She asks us to constantly pick up things for her from the store. We started refusing. She just orders things online now and maybe leaves once a month to go shopping. She even does her doctor appointments mostly online. I cannot walk through my home, nor can my daughter or husband, without her launching into a flurry of questions about what we are doing, why we are doing, when we are doing things. Constant what about this, what about that. It is never ending. I hide downstairs or in my room a lot just to avoid the incessant questions. I am tired of constantly explaining myself in my home. Not even my 5-year-old daughter is safe from this. We have spoken to her about it, but again this woman ignores us. When my husband comes home from work, every time he sits down she appears asking him to look at this or that or fix this or that. If he doesn't move she begins to nag him until he becomes understandably frustrated. The bad part is this usually ends up directed at myself and our daughter rather than my MIL. She sets different rules for my daughter than we do, and my daughter remains frustrated because she isn't sure who to listen to anymore. Actually, my daughter's behavior has gone downhill since this woman has moved in with us. Almost feels like my MIL is hijacking motherhood away from me, because my daughter no longer comes to me for anything. Though I have raised my concerns many times to my MIL and my husband, nothing has changed. I am not even close with my daughter anymore. This month has been the worst, and honestly I am not sure how much more I can take. The rule was for her to cover her bills, as I know she is on a limited income and we pay for everything else. However, cable was added to our bills without any discussion, and without speaking to me my MIL was added to our ins, which jacked up the cost dramatically. I am the one who does the family budget each month, and then I was informed because she had to pay for her car tags this month we had to cover the TV and her ins bill. I am just wondering if my frustration is out of line, or am I justified in reaching my limit with all the concessions I have made in my home for this woman? All of this does not include her not doing anything in this house unless my husband is home. Then she runs into the kitchen to do dishes or act like she is trying to help. Meanwhile, when he is at work she sits on her butt and doesn't do anything. When I or anyone else raise our concerns she plays dumb and acts like the victim regardless of how many times we have the same discussion. Then there is the petty little things she does, like shutting off the coffee and dumping it out when she knows good and well someone else wants a cup, or jumping into the shower when someone else needs the restroom to get ready for work, or pretending to be incapable of doing things when my husband is home that she does just fine when he isn't around. I have suggested her finding a hobby so she has something else to fixate on other than every move we make in our home. I have suggested her moving in with her cousin or his brother, who I learned no longer speaks to her. I suggested her selling her car and moving into a senior living home. Anything. But this can't keep going this way. My husband and I have had our share of disagreements, but the only thing we have ever fought about is her, because I feel she is the most manipulative, petty person I have ever met, and I have never met a parent so dependent on their child in my life. Am I being too harsh? Or am I out of line here? I know my temper and I do not wish to blow up and destroy my family, but I am not sure what to do anymore. I feel like I keep giving and it is just not enough. Listen, this is your home. That is your husband and your children. You should not be made to feel like an outsider in your home. It sounds like you are trying to set boundaries and she is intentionally ignoring them. You should talk to your husband. You should be a united front. If she cannot respect you or your household, She needs to find a different place to live. Update: am I out of line here or is she? I out of line here or is she? So my husband confronted his mother over the financial issue and how we can afford to cover her bills on top of paying all the bills in the house, and she turned that conversation into a blame game. Well, you knew before you added me to your ins it was going to get higher. But the deal was she was supposed to pay the difference. Never mind that. I was furious, as you can imagine. What kind of mother blames their son for not being able to shoulder her bills? A few days after this, her and I got into a disagreement over my daughter. Her response was as per usual to go into her room, slam the door like a spoiled teenage and pout the remainder of the day. She refused to eat dinner with us, which was fine by me, but it was what happened later that had me so angry I had to check myself before physically removing her from my home myself. My husband and I make it a point to put our daughter to bed around 9:30–10 p.m. every night. She doesn't sleep more than 8 hours ever, so this schedule works for us. We were preparing for our annual Halloween party and I was up really late getting everything in order for the next day, and I hear her talking in my daughter's room. It's after 2:00 a.m. I go stand in the hall and see this woman coming out of my daughter's room and stare her down. I was far too angry to speak, so I went into the bathroom where my husband was taking a shower and told him what his mother was up to. After this I had to sit on our bed and talk myself down because I was so furious about this. What kind of a grandmother goes into a kid's room at 2 a.m. and talks to them after their parents put them to bed? When I was calm enough, I told my husband that this was unhealthy for our daughter and the relationship between his mother and our daughter was obsessive. He listened and agreed and said he would talk to her, which he did, and basically told his mother she is not to go into her daughter's room anymore. Her room is now across the hall as we're in the master in our new house. Skip to a few days later, we are all eating dinner. My husband was speaking and my daughter started to attempt to interrupt. A friend of ours who was present asked my daughter to stop and his mother interjected, "Well, she just wants soda." We know. I seeing his mother make excuses for my child's behavior we do not tolerate. Get up and leave the table. My husband turns to his mother and tells her this is exactly what we have been talking about for the last year. She is not our daughter's mother and it is not her place to make excuses for her or to intervene when others are correcting or speaking to her. His mother proceeds to raise her voice to my husband. I hear this and come back in the room and call her down. She denies everything and plays dumb as always, and I flat out call her a liar. I told her I was sick of this and she replied me too, and I responded with, "Then find another place to live." My husband later told me I am not wrong, but he wanted to try and handle it. I said okay fine, you handle her, but the only compromise I am accepting at this point is her to fall in line or get out. Also, I highlighted to my husband how she tried to manipulate the situation. First she claimed she didn't interject, then she said oh the friend, and I started speaking at the same time, then later told hubby oh I didn't mean to do that. That is where we are now. I am not speaking to the woman and I am keeping my daughter as much away from her as possible. I am only giving him a very short amount of time to reason with her. If that fails she goes or my daughter and I do. Oh hell no, she needs to get the duck out now. Update: 2 a.m. I out of line here or is she? Original post: I out of line here or is she? First update: am I out of line here or is she? My husband and I had a long talk about everything, and he asked me to let him handle it. However, he wanted me to write a list of rules to give her so she can't use the excuse, "Well, I didn't know," over the various things we have repeatedly spoken to her about. I did this and took a few nights away from the house with our daughter so he could chat with her, hoping he could just tell her that one toe out of line and that was going to be the end. Skip forward to Monday. I was in a lot of pain because I slept like crap while I was gone, so I was laying in my bed and heard my mill talking to my daughter. They were playing cards, which is fine, but then I heard her starting to give my daughter a laundry list of crap to do. So I get up and call my daughter away. Generally when I want to get my daughter to do something I do not order her. I give her a problem to solve to teach her how to think for herself, not what to think. For example, I would love to do it with you, but oh no, there are Barbies all over the place so we don't have room. Wonder how we could fix that? Also to teach her self-motivation. Anyways, just barking orders isn't my style and it is on the list that I created to not boss my daughter around like that. So rule was broken. I informed my husband. Later that day, husband is still at work. My daughter wanted a snack. I am trying to teach my child independence, so I let her make her own snack. Get a bowl and put grapes in it. I hear his mother in the kitchen and instead of letting my daughter do something she is perfectly capable of doing, she took over, and I hear my child saying, "Let me do it, I can do it, please let me do it," which the woman ignored. Again, this was on the rule list that we want our daughter to try to do things for herself even if she messes up, because that is how she learns. I text my husband and tell him I had to get up again and tell Mill that our daughter can do it herself. He comes home, speaks to his mother. She goes into denial. I heard it from the bedroom and that was the end of it. Yesterday, back was a bit better but not great, so I was still taking it easy. My Mill wanted to paint my daughter's nails. I have no issue with that, so they did that morning, and a little while later I hear my Mill questioning my daughter, "Why did you peel it off? Why? I call my daughter away. I mean, she's 5, the nails aren't going to stay perfect. Later I go into my daughter's room to tell her I am going to lay down on a heating pad, and my daughter says she is going to watch scary movies, kid movies. I am like, have fun. As I leave my daughter's room, my mill is in her door waiting. She is watching scary movies, is that what she said? I did not respond. Because again, interrogating every move I make in my home or what I do with my daughter is on the rule list. I informed my husband. He said okay, he'd handle it. As I am laying down resting my back, I hear my mill and daughter in the kitchen. She asked my daughter what candy she wants, which I had told my daughter no more candy until after dinner. I come out of the room, the candy bowl is on the table, my daughter is sorting through it, and I say no. Mill tells my daughter, "Oh, mommy said no," as if I am the bad guy, and I told my daughter, "Sorry baby, Gram shouldn't have said yes." Mill then informs me, "Well, I told her to ask you." When she knew I was resting because she heard me speaking to my daughter earlier, no rest for me. I end up just sitting at my desk in pain to watch this woman. My husband comes in later and Mill calls him into the kitchen to talk, and I hear the most insane story I have ever heard in my life. Blaming our daughter didn't work, so she tried to turn it on me. She informed my husband that I busted out of my room before she had the opportunity to tell our daughter to come ask me. I yelled from our room, "Yeah, that's why the candy bowl was on the table for our daughter to dig through." She shoots back that she was putting something back in it. Then just at whatever it was back and don't take it down for my daughter to reach. I just shouted at that point, "There's always an excuse, it's always someone else's fault and I am sick of it." She yelled back, "You won't even let me explain," and I responded, "Not if you are going to lie your percents off." As per usual, she ran in her room and slammed the door. I've told my husband this isn't going to work and he has been looking into income-based apartments for her. Now it is a matter of seeing what happens next. I look forward to your next update because this isn't over. Stand strong. This is your hill to die on, or you're looking at a lifetime of being a second-class citizen in your own home. Update 3 am I out of line here or is she? For context, first post I out of line here or is she? Update 1 am I out of line here or is she? Update 2 am I out of line here or is she? Okay, so everything has reached a head in the past month or so concerning my mill and my DH. Obviously the rule list was a waste of time. And I kinda assumed it would be. She has done everything possible to ignore it aside from outright spitting in our faces or throwing it at us. However, this really doesn't even matter anymore because she finally messed up badly enough that my husband not only sees it but he is furious. Weekend of Easter. So, Thursday, Mill approaches DH while my daughter is in the room to proclaim that our daughter has been taking things from her room. DH tells his mother, "Well, maybe you should have told her no and set boundaries with her like we have asked you to do from the beginning. We can't tell her no when you go behind us and say yes." I am nearby in a doorway, and as this conversation is happening I see the shock and pain in my daughter's eyes. Mill has always allowed her to borrow things and basically do whatever she wants. I said nothing at the time as my DH had handled it. Friday, Mill comes to me obviously because she hasn't gotten the answer she wished from my husband, her son. "Same thing, your daughter has been taking things from my room without permission." My daughter starts crying her eyes out and tries to defend herself. A 5-year-old trying to defend herself against a 70-something-year-old. I tuck my daughter behind me and yell at her the same thing my husband told her, and I packed my daughter up for the day and we took an hour's drive to my mother's house. The entire way my daughter is crying her eyes out saying, "Mama, I didn't take anything, I wasn't allowed to. Mama, my heart hurts." Why did she say that? Here I am for an hour trying to explain to my daughter this isn't her fault. I get there and call my husband and told him our daughter was my last straw. This is insanity. Note, we have another person who lives with us, rents a room here, and my daughter has never gone into his room or into our room and taken anything. She stays the night places and has never taken anything or touched anything she has not been told she can play with. Ever. I know because I spoke to everyone after the first accusation. She knocks before going into rooms that are not her own and she asks if she can come in. Now, Saturday we had Easter at my aunt's due to everyone having other obligations the next day. Kids had a great time and we all returned home and not a word was said about anything else for the time being. Sunday, this is when I finally blew up. I was not interested in speaking to or being around my Mill, but she came into the kitchen when she thought I was alone and she started the questions game. "When can I give you your Easter presents?" Sad attempt at love bombing because she knew she screwed up, even her son was being short with her, but anyways. I responded, I really didn't care with my daughter or my husband, but I was not interested in anything she had to offer anymore. I was not loud, just straight to the point. She comes back with a raised tone like she always does when she thinks I am alone. What did I do now? I slowly turned towards her and glared at her, taking a moment to keep myself settled before responding. At this point she yelled at me, Don't you yell at me. Of course, this is when I absolutely yelled at her that it was my house and I will speak any way I damn well please in it, and she could duck off if she didn't like it to get the duck out of my house. I told her that I would not be sweeping this whole thing with my kid under the rug, and I am not playing any more of her ducking games. I added, had she just been respectful in our home and listened to what we wanted in our home, we wouldn't be here. About that time our housemate popped out and yelled, "Let her go," slam her door like the toddler she is. Now this guy has always minded his own business, but finally someone had caught what she does when she thinks I am alone, and I have never been so grateful. She threw her door back open, started in on him needing to mind his business because my daughter had been taking things. He told her my daughter never went into anyone's room except hers and took anything ever because we all set boundaries like she was instructed to do, and had she not gone behind our backs every chance she got to permit the girl to do what we said no on, then we wouldn't be here. There was no reason to call the kid a thief. She started back with, "She never said that." Semantics. And that isn't what she meant. He came back with, "Then why for 2 days have you gone to both her parents and now brought it up to me trying to get her in trouble for it?" That shut her up and she slammed the door. I spent about a week out of the house to create some space between myself, Mill, and my daughter, because at this point it's mental abuse of a 5-year-old and I am not having it. DH later wrote Mill a long letter basically telling her she needs to find another place to live, this isn't going to work, and this had gone too far. She asked if she could respond by letter or talking, and he instructed her to write something because he had no will to speak to her right now. She caught him by himself and then made excuses for herself as perusal, and he basically told her he was not interested. Again disrespecting her son and his wishes. We set rules. She is to leave our daughter alone because she is hurt and doesn't understand why her grandmother has done this. Our daughter wanted to tell her about the eclipse and we allowed her to. When DH finally said time to pick up toys, we went back to Mill trying to take over and telling our daughter to clean up the toys behind him as if he didn't do a good enough job. Next morning I get up, the cups are stacked really oddly on the drying towel, with my cup situated on top of a cup Mill frequently uses. I asked our housemate if he knew about it. He laughed and said he did it. Why, you may ask. Mill did all the dishes except for my stuff and he thought it was petty, so he did my dishes and did that. I laughed it off because it's just childish and pathetic. Few days later all the dishes are done minus mine again. My DH spots it this time, and confronts her about it. She claims that they weren't sitting there with the rest of the cups, but my husband, housemate, and I all know for a fact my DH cup was right next to mine because we all set them in the same place when we came in that day. So she can't lie about it. Few days later a roll of paper towels I had just set out goes missing. I look everywhere for them, go back outside with DH and daughter after setting a new roll on the counter. Keep in mind I have 3 huskies, but none of them have ever taken paper towels or toilet paper ever. Come back and later the roll I set out is still on the counter untouched, and magically the roll that went missing is all over my house, tore up. I look at it for a second and laugh. I know what happened. I know how petty she is. Since the cups thing, I get one of the pups to fetch the remainder of the roll and he promptly brings it over and drops it in my hand. No tug, he really had no interest in it and neither did the other 2. Odd. I tell my husband about it. Next day, I am washing some of the towels and I forget to throw some wash clothes in there, so I run them in. The water is running, the washer is on, and I close the lid. I remember this clearly because I dropped the lid too hard and the sound annoys me. Little later I see his mother leaving the laundry room, which I find odd because she has a different day for laundry. Go back. What do you know, the washer has been turned off, the towels are dry and the lid is open. I start laughing hysterically. What a childish bitch. Now before anyone says anything about her mental state, we already had her checked for that and everything came out normal. She does not have dementia or anything like that. That was checked a few months ago. She is mentally clear. She's just trying to push buttons. She has offered no apologies, and has sulked around the house but has been informed none of us want to speak to her right now. This includes our daughter, who is afraid to sleep in her own room because she doesn't want to be accused of anything else. Mill has been informed to look for an apartment ASAP as she will not be staying here. She asked DH how we can fix this. He responded at this point he doesn't know. I will update if there is anything else, but, as it stands, I am looking forward to finally having some peace in my home once she finds somewhere to go. I wish my Mill all the best in her life, but I have no will to see be around or hear her voice ever again. For me, that bridge has been burned and I am completely cutting her off. Boy, she can't move out soon enough. Update team.